Sheridan here with the Ohio Arts Council's Rife Gallery. We are going to hear from Mandy Peltier today. We are in the midst of the 2019 biennial juried exhibition, and she is one of 62 artists that were selected for this show. I will let her chat about her experience as an artist and halfway there, but I had the great opportunity to chat with her over dinner at the opening, after the opening, and she actually knows the moment when she decided that she would pursue arts, that she would be an artist. She was in Paris with her partner and was going to Musée d'Orsay quite a bit and saw the impressionistic work and was like, you know how a lot of people go to museums and be like, I could do that, but it's not with intention. She saw it and said, I could do that. I want to do that. I'm going to do that. And there's something really special about that. So I'm excited for you all to hear about her artistic path and all of the good stuff that comes along with that. So without further ado, Mandy Peltier.
Thank you, Kat. And thank you all for being here today, and for those who are watching online or will watch after the event. I'm really excited to be here. When Kat sent me an email a couple months ago asking if I would be one of the participating artists for the Artist Talk series, I was so excited and honored and humbled, and I've been working really hard trying to prepare an artist talk that I think you'll all enjoy and get something from. So again, my name is Mandy Peltier, and I'll start by just giving you a little bit of background of my professional accomplishments, and then I'll talk a little bit about my childhood, and we'll kind of go from there, and I will show you videos of my technique and kind of talk you through my technique, and then I'll show you some pieces of work that I've made and talk to you about them and the inspiration behind them and things like that. And there will be time for questions too, so think of some good ones for me. Okay, so professionally, I am a colored pencil artist and instructor. I teach at a few art centers around Northeast Ohio, one of which is partially funded through the Ohio Arts Council, and that's Fairmount Center for the Arts and Novelties. I just want to mention them. I also teach privately, and I travel the country teaching 2-day workshops through Ann Kohlberg's SOAR network of colored pencil instructors. Ann chose 13 colored pencil artists to send around the country teaching these 2-day workshops, and I'll be going to Missouri, Iowa, and Oregon in 2020 teaching these workshops, and my workshops are on my preferred favorite surface, sanded paper, which you'll learn more about today, because that's what the demo is on. In addition to that, I am the membership director for the Colored Pencil Society of America. You'll probably hear me refer to it today as CPSA, because that's a lot easier to say, and that's what everyone calls it. So as the membership director, my job is really to interact with our membership. They can ask me any questions they have about membership. I'm the one they send their renewals to or their new membership. And CPSA is an organization that really seeks to educate and promote colored pencil as a fine art medium. It's not a medium that a lot of people know a lot about. It's not one that's often taught in art school. And so CPSA sort of helps fill that gap, and I'm really excited to be a part of it. One way they do that is through hosting 2 exhibitions every year to promote colored pencil artists and their work. They also do a lot of education and publications, and we also do light fast testing, which I will talk about in a little bit as well. In addition to that, I'm almost done with my professional part of it. I'm a signature member of American Women Artists. I'll call that AWA because it's also quicker and easier to say. Really excited to be a signature member. I love American Women Artists and what they stand for. It is their desire and goal to promote women artists. They just announced a couple of statistics yesterday that I want to share. Of all the museums in the United States and Europe, only 3 to 5% of the art in these museums is by women artists, and galleries only 30%. So there's a huge discrepancy, and I'm really passionate about mutuality and equality between men and women. So I'm really excited to be part of AWA that does such a great job giving women equal opportunity. And one thing they do in that regard is they have a 25 and 25 campaign, where it is their goal to have 25 museum exhibitions in 25 years in 25 museums. And so this past summer, a piece I'm going to show you today called See Me was in a museum in Colorado, which was a huge honor to be able to say I've had artwork in the museum. So And all of their museum shows, one of the prizes is that the museum buys one of the pieces for the permanent collection, giving women an opportunity to fill the wall space of museums permanently. Beyond that, my artwork has been published in various magazines and other publications. For instance, my piece, See Me, that I've already mentioned that I'll show you later, is in the current issue of Fine Art Connoisseur magazine, so you can check that out. So with that, we're going to take a blast of the past, and I'm going to talk about growing up. So this is a picture of my family growing up. This is me with the darker blonde hair, even though my hair is a lot darker now because I dye it with henna. And that's my sister and my brother and my mom and my dad. So I grew up in a very artistic home. I'll talk about my mom first. My mom is very, I guess you could say, domestically artistic. She's an excellent cake decorator. She can do buttercream, fondant, you name it. She does a great job. She's also a master seamstress, and she makes the most beautiful smock dresses you'll ever see. Same with knitting. She's a master knitter. She makes her own soap and other bath products, and it's just very creative. I'm a lot like her, and my dad is the same. But we sort of become interested in something, and we dive in headlong. And it's intense, and we learn everything we can about it, and we become proficient at it in a very short amount of time. So like her, I sew. I do know how to knit, but I do more crochet. I do make my own soap and bath products. I do some woodworking. I mean, you name it, I've probably done it. Her and I are both very musical. We sing, we play instruments, just very right-brained. I am terrible at math. And I didn't do great at science. I'm very, very right-brained. My dad, on the other hand, went to art school, and his focus was photography. And he was a corporate photographer for his entire professional career with the same company. He retired a few years ago. But on the side, he always did weddings, senior pictures, other events. And I have very early childhood memories of going to these extra side events with him and helping. I would hold the light meter while he calibrated his lighting equipment. And as I got older and became interested in photography and even became proficient at it, he would use me as a second shooter, and we even shot some events together, which was kind of fun. So with the photography thing in mind, we'll fast forward quite a bit to now. Well, not exactly now. I do apologize. This picture is a little old. I told my husband we need to update it because my kids have changed quite a bit. And we totally can, because I took this picture myself, and the hand of mine you can't see, I'm holding a remote. It's just kind of a hassle to set everything up and get your kids to cooperate and get them all dressed up and showered and all of that. So we haven't updated it. But that's my husband and my daughter and my 2 sons. And my husband and I will be married for a baker's dozen in a few months, and after we got married, we spent the first 10 years of our marriage moving around the world every 1 to 3 years. His job moved us around, and so when you're following your partner around the world for their career, it can be a little tricky to have your own career. And I really knew I didn't want to work where my husband worked. It wasn't really my jam. I wanted something creative and something that would be transient. So it should really come as no surprise that I chose photography because of my dad and my growing up years. So I was a portrait photographer for a number of years. I really wanted to photograph seniors, but I learned very quickly overseas that senior pictures are a very uniquely American thing, and so that market tapped out really quick. My Canadian friend thought I was talking about elderly people when I told her I liked senior pictures, which was cracking up, like not even in Canada, but what can you do? So I photograph mostly families and young children. I will say, when we were living in Poland, we adopted our youngest son, this middle one here, and it was during that time that I discovered colored pencil. So I had been using other media up till that point, mostly acrylics and watercolors, some oil, but I'm very messy. And you know, if you're an artist sitting here or watching at home, you know, artists tend to just collect art supplies like it's their job, and they may not even know why they have this particular art supply, but you're an artist, just collect things. And that was true for me, and it still is true for me, especially Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But I had the full set of Prismacolor Premier pencils sitting on my shelf, just collecting dust. I had never used them. And I wish I could remember what inspired me to use them. But when we adopted my son, I took a hiatus from photography, from taking clients, because I wanted to focus on bonding with him he with us and just helping him adjust to our family because he was 3 years old when we got him. So not quite the same as having a newborn, so we needed to buckle down and focus on bonding and things. So I had a little bit more free time because he was still taking naps at that point, and that's when I tried colored pencil, and it was love at first try. So the first piece I made were Polish pottery mugs that I stacked 3, one on top of each other, and I was kind of blown away when I was done. I mean, if I were to look at it now, I'd be like, yeah. But at the time I was like, wow, colored pencil did that? I couldn't believe it. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about colored pencil, and the reason why is it's just a medium a lot of people don't know a lot about. When people hear colored pencil, I unfortunately think we usually think of a children's instrument, something a child would use, but it's so, I mean, it is that, but it's so much more. So I was mostly drawn to the fact that the end result of colored pencil has a painterly look. I was really blown away by that. Now it is interesting, colored pencil is, compared to other media, is pretty new to the art scene. And if you were to look at colored pencil art from the 90s, it does look like colored pencil or like a drawing. You can see a lot of the tooth of the paper showing through, and some artists like that look and it's fine. But I want to say in the early to mid 2000s, artists kind of kicked it up a notch, and it's now really common to completely cover the tooth of the paper to where you can't see any of it showing through. And so it just yields a very painterly look. I also was drawn to its cleanliness. I had mentioned that I'm super messy, and I would get paint all over everything and all over myself. I managed to get oil paint on a curtain somehow, even though the canvas wasn't anywhere near the curtain. I don't know how it happened. So colored pencil, the biggest mess you're going to make is with the pencil shards, or if you're like me, you might have pencils all over your drafting table and all over your lap and all over the floor. But still, that's quicker to clean up than paint and cleaning the brushes and everything else. So beyond that, I also love the portability. Of course, there are artists who take their pastels and their paints and do on plein air, but it's a lot easier to take a few pencils and a paper with you wherever you go. So it's not uncommon to see me working on a small piece in a waiting room at the airport while I'm waiting for my flight, etc. Very portable, I love that. I love their precision. You have that nice little point that you can sharpen and you can get the most detail so easily. More easily than you can, I think, brushes. I love their approachability. Most people have been using colored pencils or a pencil or a crayon since they were very young, since they were a small child. And so I think the learning curve with colored pencil is a little less steep than, if you had to learn how to use clay tools or brushes or etc. I also love their versatility. Colored pencil is pretty much known as a translucent medium. What I mean by that is if you were to put an even layer of yellow down on a piece of paper and then put an even layer of blue on top of that, you could still see some of the yellow, you could still see some of the blue, but it would also together make green. So it's sort of that sandwiching effect. You have to layer a lot to get an opaque look. At the same time, to that layer of yellow and that layer of blue, if you were to take a brush in odorless mineral spirits and take it over that, it would dissolve the wax, push the pigment together, and make it look more transparent. So I love that colored pencils can be used opaquely, transparently, or translucently, depending on how you use them. And the last thing about colored pencil is that they are archival. One thing CPSA does, which I think is one of its greatest contributions to the art world, is their light fastness testing. We do it according to ASTM standards, and we use an ASTM approved box to do the testing in. And we test many sets every year. The light fast booklet is always being updated. So artists who belong to CPSA, it's a membership benefit, can have access to this light fast testing and know which pencils they have are light fast and which are not. So that book is invaluable to me. I only use light fast pencils for my exhibition and commission work. If I'm teaching a class, it's maybe not as important to me, but I definitely talk to students about the importance of using archival materials. And there are a few sets that are made by Carandosh and Derwent that are 100% light fast, and they're wonderful pencils. So colored pencil is not a cheap medium. It will stand the test of time. It is archival. Okay, so with that in mind, I want to talk about my art process on sanded paper. I love variety, and I get bored easily, so it is kind of surprising to me that I'm a predominantly colored pencil artist. But I think part of the reason why I can stick with colored pencil and not get bored is that I do like to use other surfaces. It kind of mixes things up a bit and changes the technique. But I keep coming back to sanded paper because it's a wonderful surface. So sanded paper is exactly as it sounds. It's basically artist grade archival sandpaper. So just like if you were to go to the hardware store and buy sanded paper to smooth spackle on your wall or to smooth down some wood on a bench you just made, it comes in different grades. I've seen it as low as 240, and I've seen it as high as 800. I tend to work in the 400 to 600 grit range. And the reasons why I like to use sanded paper is you can work on sanded paper in a similar way as to if you were painting. If you were working on white paper, generally speaking, artists work from lightest value to darkest value, but on sanded paper, you can go from dark value to light value. So you can apply lights over darks without an issue. I also, by nature, am fairly heavy-handed. I've learned to train my hand to not be heavy-handed, but just naturally speaking, I am. And sanded paper takes more of a beating than other surfaces do. Like on white paper, if you were to use too much pressure, you would just smooth out the tube of that paper, and then it would have a hard time accepting additional applications of color. But I don't have that issue with sanded paper. So it gives me the flexibility I want, and it allows me to have kind of an old master's type of technique. And so that's sort of what I'm going to show you. First, a quick snapshot. This is phase one of my process on sanded paper, and that's doing an underpainting. I might do a grisaille underpainting, which is a brown scale. I might do a grisaille, which is grayscale. I might do more of a dead layer, where it's just sort of the muted tones of what I'm doing. I'll do some sort of underpainting. And this here is a Peaches in-depth tutorial that I created for Ann Holberg. You can find it on her website, annholberg.com. So this is phase one when it's done, and when the underpainting's done, just like the old masters would do when they were done with their underpainting, they would go over it with glazes of color. And that's what I'm doing. So phase two is glazes of color. I'm not really focusing on details yet. I kind of work big and then subdivide down into smaller parts. So while there might be general detail work, it's not super, like I'm not being really careful. It's the last part of the process where I continue layering and building up the color and adding details that it looks realistic. Speaking of, ironically, since I have a photography background, I don't mean to get on a soapbox here because it doesn't really offend me and I don't lose sleep at night over this, but I prefer realism over photorealism. It's not my job to make my art look like a photo. While I do use photo references because colored pencil is a time-consuming medium, it is laborious. It's not my goal to make it look like the photo I took. If you were to see the photo reference for what I use, I make changes here and there, and I really just love capturing every little detail I can, and the nuance of color, and the smooth transitions, and trying to get all the little hues and detail, but it's not my goal to make it look like a photo. But I do understand what it does, but I just wanted to say that. All right. So I drew a small cluster of grapes, and I've recorded a video of me doing it. I've sped it up because we'd be here 5 or 6 hours if we were to watch me make these grapes from start to finish. But I just wanted to kind of walk you through how I work on sanded paper and the process. Okay, so I'm going to start by applying the darkest value, which for here is black. I don't have the benefit with paint where you can mix to get the grayscale, so I'm using different pencils for that. So I start with the darkest value, and then I'll move to the middle dark, and then the middle value, the middle light, and then the lightest value will be in a couple steps, a couple videos from now. But when I'm working on sanded paper, I use light pressure at first. I don't really go over the area more than once. I'm just laying down the approximate value that I see. Now I'm using oil-based pencils. So colored pencils, there's watercolor pencils, there's oil-based pencils, there's wax-based pencils. I will be using oil-based and wax-based pencils for this. Oil-based pencils go onto sanded paper a bit more like a soft pastel, although not quite as opaquely as a soft pastel. So it goes on very smoothly. And you'll see in the next video that I'm going to blend it out with something called powder blender, which I'll talk about in a second. But I'm not using wax-based pencils at this point because they go on gummy in comparison to oil-based pencils, and they just don't blend as smoothly. So I'm finishing up this underpainting here. I'm just being not super exact, just general speaking with where I'm putting my values. So that's what layer 1 looks like. But I still am on layer 1. Now I'm going to blend layer 1. So I'm using something called brush and pencil powder blender, and I'm using a pan pastel mini applicator to blend it out with the powder blender. The powder blender just sort of keeps the mini applicator from sticking or dragging across the sanded paper. It just puts a nice barrier in between the pigment and the applicator to smooth the pigment. So you see it kind of looks like a painting. It's sort of a painting process in a way, because I'm using this applicator to kind of smooth out the pigment. I can make adjustments as I need to after this. I might add some more black. If I smear color where it doesn't belong, I can take a kneaded eraser and lift up the pigment. If I smear black onto a lighter highlight or value, I can lift some of the pigment with a kneaded eraser. And then when I'm done blending and I'm happy with how it looks, I'm going to use another brush and pencil product called Textured Fixative, and I'm going to spray 2 to 3 layers of it onto the working surface, waiting for each layer to dry before I add another layer. And what this does is it partially glues the pigment in place, but it also adds more tooth to the surface. All right, so now, sometimes I might be done with my underpainting after 1 layer. It kind of depends what I'm going for, but because I want the grapes to have a lot of depth and richness, I'm applying another layer of the underpainting. I'm essentially doing the exact same thing I did before. Now, why do an underpainting? Well, first of all, it creates depth and adds intensity to the finished painting. It also allows me to not use as many colors as I might otherwise. If I were just to go in with a dark purple, because I see a dark purple in the grapes, I probably would be using 2 to 3 times as many pencils as I have to with an underpainting, because I'd have to keep layering and adding color to try and build up that intensity and that depth. The underpainting creates that depth for me and that intensity that I want in the color. So again, I'm still not being super careful about detail work, because that will start to come when I apply color. This is still just the grisaille underpainting. I'm still only using oil-based pencils at this point. And so now I'm going to blend the second layer of the underpainting. And once again with powder blender. And then when I'm done blending this out, I'll once again fix it with a couple layers of textured fixative. Is everyone with me? I know it might feel like a bit of a fire hose, this technique. But I want to say this process probably takes me 5 to 10 minutes. Sped up, it was what, 30 seconds? All right. So now I have it up here as the dead layer. That's sometimes what people call it when you're adding white. And I think that comes from portraits. It kind of made people look dead when you add white to their face. So I don't know if that's the best term I can use, but that's what I'm calling it here. So now I'm adding that lightest value to the grapes, where I see the lightest value in the photo reference. To the stem is the lightest value because it's a light green, but then also to where the light hits the grapes and where I have the highlights on them. And then I'm making some final adjustments. I am adding a little more black to the darkest values just to really create that juxtaposition between the lights and the darks. I'm still using oil-based pencils. I'm going to quickly, I don't have it of me blending that, but I set it with textured fixative. Okay, so now this video, I'm finally adding washes of color. The first color I used looked like black, but it was actually indigo blue. Now I'm adding a red violet, a blue violet. I'm only using, I want to say, no more than 5 pencils. And I don't need to, because I had that really richly developed underpainting to create that depth and that full value of color. So I'm going to start slowing down after this step. This is the last step where I'm only using oil-based pencils. I use oil-based pencils to really build up a nice underpainting. And when the tooth, or the grit rather, of the sanded paper is pretty well smoothed down, that's when I'll start going on top of the wax-based pencils, which is this step here. So this is really when I'm going to zoom this out. We'll just go to the next video here. Okay, so now I'm going to start using wax-based pencils. The grit of the sanded paper is pretty smooth at this point, so the wax-based pencils aren't going to go onto the sanded paper quite as gummy in appearance as it would if I had used them from the beginning. Now, the cool thing about wax-based pencils is they do go on a bit more saturated in hue, and they go on more opaquely than the oil-based pencils do. And they also help to kind of glue or adhere the oil-based pencils to the surface in a different but complementary way as the textured fixative does. So using wax-based pencils in conjunction with oil-based pencils is really the creme de la creme. It's the best thing. And so you'll see that I'll use a few oil-based pencils over top of the wax-based pencils because the oil-based pencils will help to smooth the gumminess of the wax-based pencils. So they kind of play off each other nicely and work together nicely. They're good friends. So I'm mostly using Faber-Castell Polychromos for my oil-based pencils. I'm using Prismacolor Premier, Caran d'Ache Luminance, and some Derwent Light Fast for my wax-based pencils. And Caran d'Ache Luminance really are kind of an in-between pencil. It's a very proprietary, kind of unique process how they make the core of their colored pencils. So while they go on really opaquely and richly, they also kind of smooth the wax-based pencils as well. So Caran d'Ache Luminance are my favorite pencil. I absolutely love them, and they're also the most expensive. I have expensive taste. So this is the process of applying wax-based pencils to the grapes. I will no longer be using powder blender. I will no longer be using textured fixative. At this point on, I will just be building up the details in the grapes, adding colors, adding richness, and I'm not going to show you till the end because I still had a few hours of work on this, but this is what the grapes look like finished. And so I didn't do anything different than what I just showed you in the last video. It's just adding more wax-based pencils, and oil-based pencils, and just using them interchangeably, building up the depth of color, and the final thing is the detail work, okay? So that is something I just made last week because I really wanted to demo for you guys, and it would be hard to do live since there's drying time and a lot of products. I figured the video would be better than nothing. All right, so now I'm going to show you some of my work. I'm going to show you a few portraits today. I'm going to be showing you some still lifes and a floral, and then a body of work that is special to me because it just sort of is consistent with my spirit of needing variety and versatility in my life. I'm going to start with portraits, and I think you're going to find in my portraits that I love drawing strong women who are self-assured and know their worth. Whether that's a young child or whether that's a grown woman, that is my favorite thing to draw. And I love, not that I don't like to draw men, actually my next portrait will more than likely be with my husband. And I've also drawn a few portraits of little boys, so I'm not trying to knock men here. I just love to draw strong women. So the first portrait I want to show you is of a little girl. This is called In Just a Blink, and you can see that little look of confidence in her face. And this is actually my best friend's daughter. And I just love this little girl. She's so sweet and she's so cheeky. And so I asked my friend if I could please use her daughter as a portrait reference, and she agreed. So I went over to their house and I took a ton of photos, and she was not cooperative. I used all the tricks of the trade that I learned when I was a portrait photographer, and she just knows me too well, so she was not cooperative. And it wasn't until the end that she finally relaxed and just stared with like, yeah, you thought you got a good photo of me. But as soon as I took this one, I knew it was the one. And I love how it turned out, and it just captures her personality really well. So maybe this comes from me being a portrait photographer. But when I'm looking for portraits that are like a snapshot in time, just a spontaneous moment that you were able to capture. That is really what I'm going for. And it's not that I'm opposed to narrative portrait or art at all. I love art where it's more framing or setting up a narrative. I would like to do those as well. But I love just where it's in just a blink. She's this little girl, and before you know it, she's going to be gone, raised, have her own life, her own career, her own family. So I love that we just captured this moment in time. The next piece I want to show you is See Me. This was the one I mentioned early on. This has been far and away my most successful piece to date, which is a lot of pressure to try and to make something else that can rise to her level. But I had mentioned at the beginning of my artist talk that my husband and I lived all around the world after we were first married. And one of the countries we lived in was Nigeria. We lived there for 2 years. And that's where I took this photo. This is a young woman who was part of the Fulani tribe. And the meaning of this piece, I don't want you just to see a young woman with beautiful headdress and beautiful necklaces. I want you to see her worth and her value and what she can offer this world. And the title has a double meaning because in her eyes, do you see that little person and her reflection? That's me, because I took a photo. So when you see her, you can see me too. Now, I obviously want the latter to be less of what people get from this photo. I really want them to see her and her worth and value and what she can offer and her strength. And how she just commands attention with that intense expression in her eyes. But that is me in her expression as well. And I don't get to share that often, so it's kind of fun that I get to do that today. I don't know that a lot of people know that. So see me won the Distinguished Achievement Award in Figurative or Portraiture at the Steamboat Springs Art Museum AWA show this past summer. And she just won the People's Choice Award at the Valley Arts Center in Chagrin Falls, which is also partially funded through the Ohio Arts Council, so thank you for that. And a figurative portrait collector has purchased this piece, so it'll be mailed to him in Texas in just 2 weeks. So I'm really excited about that. That was a huge milestone for me in many ways. So it's going to be sad to see this piece go because it means a lot to me. And I drew this piece 10 years to the day that I took it, so it was really therapeutic to work on it, and it just brought back a flood of memories of our time in Nigeria. All right. The other piece I want to show you is Chelsea. So I don't want my art career, my artwork to just be about me. I want to be able to use my gifts and talents to give back to others and to serve others. And I think I do that in one capacity as the membership director for CPSA, because that is a volunteer position. But I also am a participating artist for the Beyond the Diagnosis charity. Now this is a charity that is near and dear to me, because our son, who we adopted, has special needs and has a rare disease. He's missing part of his 9th chromosome. And so I signed up to be a participating artist. They accepted me. And what they did is they paired me with a family, and I agreed to a portrait with the mom, and I drew Chelsea. And when I was finished drawing Chelsea, I mailed it to Beyond the Diagnosis, and she is now part of their traveling exhibit. And so there might be more than one exhibit going on at a time, but these exhibits go to research centers, medical institutions, hospitals. It's gone to the National Institute of Health. Chelsea's been at the Birmingham Children's Hospital. So she'll just perpetually travel with this exhibit. And the goal is to not only raise awareness for rare diseases, but to help medical professionals not just see the disease, but to see the person behind the disease, to see the person. So I love that, and I hope to make more portraits for Beyond the Diagnosis because it's important for me for people to see the value of human life, and this is one way that I can kind of, fight for that and advocate for that. I wanted to show you my piece that is currently in progress and untitled. So it's not done yet. I still have some work to do on the faces, but I want to come up with a title that conveys a mother's love and faithfulness and just, I guess just love for her child and for motherhood and for a child's complete safety and security in its mother's arms. This is my largest piece to date. 16 by 20 may not be very large for other media, but it is large for colored pencil, at least in my estimation. It has taken me so long working on this piece. I feel like I've been working on it forever. I've probably put in 80 hours so far, and I have no idea how much longer I have left, but it's my goal to, if not finish it by the end of the month, to finish it by the end of January. And then after that, I'm hoping to start a few more pieces because I love working on it, but I'm also kind of ready to be done. It's been a long process working on this one. All right. And then the last one I want to show you is not a person. It's a portrait of a kitten. I had mentioned that I'm a colored pencil instructor, and this is an upcoming class I'll be teaching at Fairmount Center for the Arts in February. I had a student who came to me and said, Mandy, if I can learn how to draw a cat, I feel like I could draw anything. Can you please do a class on how to draw a cat? And I'm like, well, I don't draw animals, but sure, I'll try it. So I did, and this is what I came up with, and this is on pastel mat, and pastel mat is a surface that's made partially from cork. So I think it sort of has a spongy feel to it, and it's mostly used for pastel, but colored pencil artists have really taken to it because it has a lot of the same capabilities as sanded paper. You can add highlights last over other colors. It can take a beating and a heavy hand better than other surfaces can. So I like how the kitten turned out. I think he has a cute little expression in his eyes and his cute little mouth. So I'm excited to teach this class in February. All right, so now I'm going to kind of take you through some of my florals and still life. I don't really consider myself a floral artist per se, but I do love drawing still lifes. I am really inspired by the color wheel and how I compose my still life art. My favorite color wheel composition is an analogous palette where you have colors that are directly next to each other on the color wheel. You can see that and see me in some of my portraits, and you'll see it more with my still lifes. And I do think nature just lends itself to an analogous palette or an analogous complementary palette just naturally. Like if you look at a peach, all the shades on a peach are all directly next to each other on a color wheel. And I'm really drawn to that, no pun intended, maybe will. But I love still life art that sort of has a farmhouse, homestead, agricultural vibe and feel to it. And I don't know if that's because I'm from the Midwest and I have those Midwest values and that love for the farmland and the heartland. But I think there's more to it, and I'll kind of explain why as I go through these. But the first one, forget what I just said because this has nothing to do with what I just said. This is orchid blossoms. This is colored pencil on sanded paper. Even the black background is all colored pencil. While there is black sanded paper now, I didn't use it. I just used the natural colored beige sanded paper. So this took me probably 25 to 30 hours to draw. And I wanted to share this today because it was successful, I think, because of the depth of it, how you have the two orchids that are completely in focus that recede to a couple orchids that are slightly out of focus that recede into the orchids that are completely out of focus. So I think people are really drawn to the depth of it. But I drew this when I was having artist block. I didn't know what to draw, what to create. I was stuck. And so I just want to encourage any artists who are out here, you can still be productive and you can still create art even when you're stuck. So what I did to kind of overcome the artist block is I just went through old photos. And I just looked for something that might be fun or interesting to try. And I think that's why I drew this, because it doesn't really have a farmstead, farmhouse vibe to it. But my husband had gifted me these orchids for Easter, I think 3 years prior to me drawing this, and I still had the photo that I took of them. And I'm really glad I did it, because I love how it turned out, and people received it really well, and I don't think I would have drawn it had I not been going through an artist block. So that's why I wanted to show that to you guys. This is different yet the same, and I drew this one shortly after the orchid. A really sad event that happened in our country got me out of my artist block. I don't know if you remember those white supremacist rallies that happened in Virginia in August of 2017. I remember watching the news and being heartbroken over those riots and just, angry at how people can treat people that way just because of the pigment of their skin. And I saw these pumpkins, and I was really drawn to them because they're different, but they're the same, they're all pumpkins. And I thought, this picture wouldn't be nearly as beautiful if all the pumpkins were orange. It's even more beautiful and even more appealing because they're all different shades. The composition is just so much more lovely that way, and I think that's true for humans. If we can all just learn to work together, and things would just be so much more beautiful. So I think if you were to look at this piece and read the title, Different Yet the Same, you wouldn't necessarily pick that up. But I just want to encourage you that sometimes there's more than meets the eye. Maybe it's not just a drawing of pumpkins. Look at the title. I think sometimes artists try to give you a little hint of what they're trying to communicate with the title. So different yet the same. Drawn as a result of those terrible white supremacist rallies that I hope goes into the annals of history. All right, so the next piece is Fresh from the Coop, and this is the piece that you can see in person because it's in this show. And this piece, more than any other, has the most meaning to me, and I'll explain why. So I had mentioned my husband, the job he had for the first 10 years of our marriage, moved us around a lot, and while there was a lot of that lifestyle that I loved, and I got to, my worldview was expanded in so many ways, living in so many different countries, some third world, some second world, some first world. It was really eye-opening to see the world. Most Americans don't get that opportunity. There's still something about home and longing for roots and longing for stability. And so when I drew this picture, we had no idea what our future looked like. when we moved to Ohio 3 years ago, we thought it was only going to be for a couple years, and then we would move on. And so I love agriculture and sustainability, and I garden, and I've been tapping our maple trees and boiling down the sap and making syrup with it, and I love composting of all things, and I wanted a chicken coop and an apiary. I just wanted my own little homestead in our backyard. And those things are kind of hard to do overseas. When we lived in Poland, we didn't have a backyard. And I tried to have a container garden, but we lived in a row house kind of place, and so there was it was all shade, no sun. The plants did not do well. And I had a little arrow garden, but that just doesn't cut it. So just longing for a homestead for stability, for roots more than anything. And so I think it was Norman Rockwell who I heard recently, who said that he likes to paint the world he wants to live in. And that is, I love that creatives can do that. I love that as an artist, I can draw the world or the life I want to have. And so, and not in a discontented way, because there's plenty about moving overseas that I loved. But even if I could never have that chicken coop, even if I could never have those roots or that stability, I could through art. I could through this piece. And so this was already something I was thinking about doing, and my friend brought me over a dozen eggs from a local homestead, and I opened it up, and they were beautifully packaged with a bright blue egg and that green egg and multicolored brown eggs, and I thought, this is what I've been, yes, this is perfect. So I drew them. And I love the top-down perspective. I think it adds a really fresh, contemporary look to kind of a classic subject matter, or just sort of a typical subject matter. And so you'll see a lot more pieces of mine in the future, and another one in this presentation that's from that top-down perspective. And this is also part of the series that I've been doing of food, mostly fruit, but eggs aren't. So just food in various vessels, whether that be in a basket, whether that be a bushel. Before this, I drew some blackberries in a ceramic bowl. So just something about that is very appealing to me. I think it's the whole agricultural thing, wanting to have my own homestead kind of thing. So fresh from, now you know the story behind that. All right, this is Peachy Memories, another food in a vessel, part of that series. Not exactly the top-down perspective, but this is technically a mixed media piece. It's colored pencil and pastel pencil on sanded paper. CPSA does not consider pastel pencils a colored pencil because of the wax to binder ratio. Pastel pencils nor chalk. So they do consider watercolor pencils to be colored pencils, but not pastel pencils because of that wax to binder thing. So the entire floor is done with pastel pencil, and everything else is colored pencil. So while I say I'm a colored pencil artist, it's not that I use them exclusively. I do still use other media, and one of my upcoming pieces is going to be oils. So, but I just consider myself a colored pencil artist because I love them, and it's what I use predominantly. But this piece came about. My friend who lives in the South, I was visiting her when peaches were in season, and they were so good, and they were so picture perfect, and some still had the leaves on them. So I just took a bunch of pictures of them with no intention of necessarily drawing them, because I'm taking pictures quite a bit. And then, and she lived, I should say that, she lived in a century home with a lot of history, and the wood floor in this picture is original to the home. And she found out about a year after I visited her that they had to move to a new state for her husband's job. And it was a really hard move on her. And she really went kicking and screaming, I guess you could say. So I knew I wanted to draw this for her. And I did. And I was still able to enter it into some online exhibitions and things. But I drew this for her because I wanted it to warm up her new home, but give her peachy memories of her old home. So I don't do that often. I have to be careful about that. But I'm really glad I did that for my friend. Okay, this is a sweet tradition, another still life that is food in a vessel, and it's from that top-down perspective I had mentioned with the eggs. This was actually a commission piece. So I do take some commissions, but I am very picky about it because my plate is pretty full teaching and trying to create art for exhibitions and things. So I like to take the photo reference myself if I can. I was able to take this photo reference. If I can't take the photo reference myself, I'm very picky. I had to unfortunately turn down someone who approached me for a commission just the other week because they just weren't photos I thought I could work from. But when the client approached me about this one, I'm like, I was already planning on doing that. Yes, I'll take this on. And so it was a no-brainer. So I loved working on this piece, and the title, The Sweet Tradition, just kind of conveys and evokes family tradition and roots. And the family that commissioned me to do this, they have a tradition every year of going to the apple orchard, picking apples, and then making applesauce and other things with them. So it just goes perfectly with my homestead family agricultural kind of desire, feel, and values. And this is 16 by 12, so this was a little bit bigger than how I wanted to work. So just a quick snapshot of the process of this one. This is the first layer, or the underpainting. I did a very basic underpainting for this one. I was just that one layer, and then I kind of moved on. This is how it looked at the middle point of the process. So you're starting to see some details, but it's still looking kind of gritty from the sanded paper. And then this is it when it's done. So I kind of work the sanded paper until it's smooth and I can't add any other color. I like to work it until I can't work it anymore, which is probably why it looks like a photo. All right, so the last body of work I want to show you is something that's fun to me. They're small works. They're all on different surfaces. I had mentioned at the beginning of my artist talk that it's not uncommon for me to take pencils and paper with me and work on pieces when I'm out and about. So that's what these small works are. I use these small works for a couple of different reasons, or in a couple of different ways. First, I explore different surfaces with these small works. So maybe if I've never tried unprimed wood, it wouldn't make sense to do a huge piece on wood if I've never actually worked on it before. And so I can explore how wood takes colored pencil by making something small. And then I can also explore new techniques. So the first small work I just want to show you is Rose. And none of these have creative titles since they're just more me stretching myself as an artist and expanding my skill set, if you will. So this is Rose. This is on Canson Me Tints colored paper. It's buff, which is sort of a pumpkin-y orange-brown color. The nice thing about colored paper is you don't have to worry as much about covering every square inch of the tooth of the paper, because if you choose a complementary color or a middle value, it'll still sort of shine through the other colors and add some interest and visual interest, although I didn't cover the tooth in this one. But the other cool thing about colored paper is certain colors sort of have a glowing effect as a result of applying them to colored paper, whereas they look more luminescent on colored paper than they do on white paper. This is my exploratory piece on unprimed wood, which was a lot of fun to work on. I really like working on wood. I plan on doing more on wood in the future. You can clean very easily the pigment from wood, which you can't do on other surfaces. About halfway through this piece, I started doing my strokes vertically to sort of follow the direction of the wood grain. You don't have to do that, but I liked the visual interest of that. You can work on wood primed with clear gesso or something else. I liked working on it unprimed and really having the grain of the wood show through. And then when I was done, I fixed it with final varnish to protect it. And this is Rise and Shine. This is on pastel matte. The same surface I drew that kitten on that I had shown you guys. I was able to put the whites on last over the darker colors. And I like pastel matte too because like colored pencil or like sanded paper, I think the end result is even more painterly. It looks even more like a painting than I would say even other surfaces do. So I just really like that soft effect you get. While sanded paper is my favorite surface, I would say pastel matte is my second. Probably because it has some capabilities. Okay, this is When Morning Gilds the Skies. This is on clayboard. Have any of you heard of clayboard? It's probably not a surface a lot of people would think could take colored pencil. But I want to talk about my friend Amy Lindenberger. She's another Ohio artist, which is why I think it's appropriate to mention her in this artist talk. And she lives up near me in Northeast Ohio. And she's been using colored pencil for a long time, and she has made wonderful contributions to the colored pencil world. Because if you think about it, colored pencil hasn't been in use as long as other media, so we're still learning, we're still developing techniques. And Amy Lindenberger has been a pioneer in that regard. So she has a whole book on how to work on clayboard that you can get from AnnColberg.com. But basically her technique is you start by doing an underpainting with powdered graphite, and then you lift off the values using various erasers. You set that with satin fixative. When that dries, then you scribble in colored pencil. You use odorless mineral spirits to smooth it. When that dries, you spray more satin fixative, and then you keep building up the layers using the colored pencil, odorless mineral spirits, fixative. And I really think the end result looks like a painting on clayboard, because you can't necessarily see pencil work unless you leave some intentionally in there. And it's such a smooth surface, but with the powdered graphite, and then you're kind of scratching away with different erasers and with the pencils, it had some texture in there. That's just really cool. So while I don't normally do florals, my next piece is going to be some dahlias. I had the opportunity to go to a dahlia farm in Hudson, Ohio, and it was amazing. And I took so many pictures. And so I'll probably do a whole dahlia series because they're just so beautiful. And I want to do one of them on clayboard because it's such a fun surface. This is still life with oranges. This is on sanded paper, but I used a different technique than what I normally use. I covered the whole surface of the sanded paper with drying inks, bright blue drying inks. And when that dried, I went directly over it with those wax-based, well, whatever they are, luminance, the Caran d'Ache luminance pencils that are lovely. So this was different because, you know, I normally use the brush and pencil products, but for this particular piece I did not, and I love it. I love that the blue of the background shines through. A lot of what I drew, you can see it in the table especially, maybe not on the screen there, but this was a fun piece to make, and I would like to do that again somehow. And then finally, for the small work series, is Spring's Promise. I took this photo at early spring of this year when our daffodils were blooming. And this was made on Duralar film, which is similar to drafting film. So it doesn't have a lot of tooth. You can only add 2 to 4 layers of color. The benefit of Duralar film is that it comes double-sided, so you can work on the front and the back. So you can do most of the detail work on the front and then use the back side of the Duralar film to build intensity in the color and kind of build up the colors and saturation. I like Duralar film because it causes the finished work to look very luminescent and bright. So even though sanded paper is my favorite surface, now that I explore and work on other surfaces, whatever I'm drawing will kind of determine what surface I use, because different surfaces have different effects and they do different things. So it might make sense to do bright yellow daffodils on drafting film because it'll help them look more luminescent. So it is nice to explore different surfaces so that you have more to pull from to really help your photo reference shine through the best on the finished piece. So with that pretty much concludes my artist talk. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I tend to do that. I was always told to slow down as a kid. I want to take questions, but first I do want to just mention something. As part of this artist talk, I thought it would be fun to do a demo with the audience. And then as I continued to build my artist talk and I filmed the video of me making that small clusters of grapes, I'm like, it would be too much. It would just be too much. So, but I still brought the tutorial I made. It's a lollipop tutorial. It's on the Duralar film. It's on the same surface as Spring's Promise, the one of the daffodils and the little bird. It's a very beginner project. I'm only using 6 pencils. And I brought copies for those of you who are here. I brought 8 of them. And it's also available on my website, mandypeltier.com, www.mandypeltier.com, and you can download the PDF there. But it's detailed, and like I said, only uses 6 pencils and a couple other things. I wanted something that would be sort of festive and holiday-ish, but not overtly so. So I thought this lollipop was perfect. So with that in mind, are there any questions after all that?
What mediums were you working in other than photography and colored pencil before you really dove into colored pencil?
Sure. So I was using mostly acrylics in watercolor. I mean, I've always liked to draw, and even now, so I didn't say this, I should say this. Some people would frown on colored pencil artists because we work from photo references, mostly, and not from life. It's not that we can't work from life, it's just harder. because the fruit would probably rot before you're done, or you'd lose the light. So it's just a lot easier to draw from a photo reference, which suits me okay because I was a photographer. And then it kind of combines both, right, with the composition and everything. But I like to keep a sketchbook with me, and graphite and charcoal pencils, and so I still draw from life. They're not just in colored pencil, because I think that is an important skill for artists to have, just to learn to draw what you see and whatnot. But mostly acrylic and watercolor, but some oil as well. Good question.
Michelangelo, he was pencil. Was that not pencil?
What?
I always think of Michelangelo as being...
Oh, he drew, well, I don't know if it was charcoal or graphite, but yeah, he did draw with pencils, but not colored pencils. They came out, I think, in the 20th century, and at first they were mostly used, I think, by like architects and things like that. It was mostly used for drafting. And I want to say, I mean, I'm sure there were people who used it before this, but it really hit the scene in the 80s. That's really when colored pencil artists kind of paved the way and became pioneers for the medium. And CPSA, Vera Cornell started CPSA in 1991, and we still have, I want to say, 52 charter members of CPSA. So I want to say, like in the 80s and the 90s, it was colored pencil artists just developing techniques and, you know, paving the way for people like me to pop in and just be able to read everything everyone else had, you know, worked hard writing and creating and stuff. But yeah, colored
That's
pencil.
so stupid. So there's no graphite in colored pencil.
No.
That's
So it's a pigment with a wax binder. That's colored pencil, so there's no graphite powder. CPSA does allow artists to use graphite underneath colored pencil, as long as the colored pencil's fully covered. You know, because artists might want to sketch out their line drawing or transfer their line drawing, and that's usually going to be in graphite. So I'll use graphite for that, but none of it is exposed when I'm done, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Okay.
Well,
Anyway, I'm throwing away around so many like art words and terms today.
there's a lot of pencil in this show.
And a lot of pencil.
And it's phenomenal.
A lot.
Because it's fun to point it out to people.
Yeah.
Pencil.
And you know, usually I have found when I enter mixed media exhibition, I'm either the only colored pencil piece or I'm one of just a couple. So it's kind of cool when I get excited when I see another colored pencil piece, because it means that it's being taken seriously and it's able to stand next to oil and linen or, you know, another more traditional media. So I love that aspect of it. It's really, I think it's in its golden days right now, colored pencil. It's being taken more seriously by more and more curators and jurors and just artists. So I'm excited about that because it's a fantastic medium. Are there any other questions?
You know what, I'm just going to say the term colored pencil seems so, I don't want to say amateur, but the sound of it takes us back to, well, I drew with colored pencils and crayons, but it's in a different category.
Yeah, and these are artist-grade colored pencils, so I would never, well, and this happened once. I was teaching a class, and they said, I'll provide the pencils, and I told them what pencils to get. And I showed up, and they were not even student grade. They were child grade. I was just like, the amount of pigment in them, the quality of the pigment, the ratio of the pigment to the wax, it's not like a artist grade colored pencil. And I think some people don't get that. Like, I drew the stacked pottery mugs I had mentioned using, I'm not going to say the brand, but the popular Child's colored pencil brand. And then I drew them with Prismacolor pencils. No comparison. As far as the saturation, the depth, the layering, and just the whole, what I was talking about, how it's really important to use archival materials. It's really important to me to use colors that are light fast, that will stand the test of time, that aren't going to fade from the light hitting them, you know, that people will be able to enjoy them for decades to come.
Do you think that's something after we've played around with the colored pencil?
Oh, absolutely.
Not now.
Absolutely. Well, because even this lollipop tutorial,
Yeah.
it uses one non-light fast color. You know, so when I'm teaching classes, it's not as big of a concern, but I'm saying, like, it's important to at least, I mean, it's still an artist-grade pencil, just the pigment they used is not, it's fugitive. So, but yeah, this is a fun tutorial because it only uses 6 colors, so you don't have to buy 50 colors to do it, because I do use a lot of colors when I create pieces. But this only uses 6 colors, and they're Prismacolor, which are, the cheapest artist grade pencils that I know of.
So you don't buy a pack, you wouldn't buy a starter kit, you would get individual pencils.
You can. A lot of people will buy, like I think Prismacolor sells as low as a 24 count set, but you can buy them open stock on Dick Blick, Jerry's Artarama, Cheap Joe's Art Supplies. You can buy them open stock from a lot of art companies. So that's generally what I do. Like I bought the whole set of Karen Dash Luminance pencils, and then I think as an artist, you naturally narrow your color palette organically. And so now I just kind of supplement by buying the luminance pencils I wrote. That was another thing I wanted to say. I have a heart for beginning artists. I love to teach beginners and kind of see them catch on and get excited about colored pencil, because I was there and I know how it feels. So a lot of people are like, you have a lot of artists who are known for drawing this one subject matter or using this one technique and finding your voice. And I really think it's most important for artists to just draw what they love and to just draw what makes them happy, even if it means that you don't have an obvious series. And I think that if you are faithful to do that and you show up every day, you will organically narrow your focus. And you won't even be trying to. Like I naturally narrowed my focus to spontaneous portraits that capture a moment in time and still lifes that sort of have a farmhouse home. It's not like I sat down at the table and okay, what are some ideas of things I could do? Like I didn't do that. I just drew what I love, and it just became clear to me that these are kind of the 2 subject matters I really like drawing. And fruit, apparently, I really like drawing fruit, and I really like the color orange. I didn't know that until I started drawing. So I just think organically you'll just kind of find what you love and start drawing those things.
Well, thanks everyone for attending and watching online Mandy's Artist Talk. I know it was super educational and informative for me, and it was really cool to see the sped up demo of you drawing those grapes. That was really cool. So I'm excited to see that on the live stream video on Facebook. So just a reminder, Mandy's work and all of the other fabulous pieces in this exhibition are on display until January 10th, 2020. So be sure to come out to the gallery and experience the 2019 Biennial Juried Exhibition.